Please introduce yourself and tell us how long you've been in the business and how you started out.
Hi, my name is Mikolai Stroinski. I write music for different kinds of media, for video games, for television, for films, although probably most of you know me from my score for The Witcher 3 game and Blood and Wine, the extension of it. So this is what I do professionally. My first project that I scored and got paid, well, my first game was done in 2012. It came to me right after I did a trailer for Dark Souls 2. There came a game to me called Mousecraft. Small game, but very, very fun to work on. But that wasn't my first project in total. When I finished my studies at Berklee College of Music, I moved to Los Angeles and I started writing as a ghostwriter. I composed music for someone else. So that was 2004, October, I believe, and that was the time when I first got paid for my composition.
You compose scores for movies, TV series and video games. Is it basically the same approach or are there differences between these media?
Big differences, especially between video games and the two other media. Difference, I can't say of a difference between film and television because it really depends on the project. There are a lot of similarities. Very often the main difference between film and television is that television the deadlines are very, very short. You have to deliver music very often for yesterday. Whereas the movie, it's like, you can have like 2 months, sometimes a month, depending on the movie. But with video game, you have plenty of time. And, sometimes even a year or a year and a half, the deadlines are very far into the future. And it's good because you can keep working and making your music better, polishing it. And it's also bad because sometimes you just wish the project was done. It just takes on forever. The difference is also the differences between video games and other types of linear media are coming from mostly two points. One is making the video game music interactive and adaptive to actions taken by a player, to adapt to those actions, to score whatever happens to events on screen. And it's a different way. Even if you don't choose to score things on screen, even if you just decide to make a loop without any events in there, just because it's a loop, you have to narrate the music in a different way. Just because it's a loop, you shouldn't really. You should take the attention away from the fact that it's a loop. So not take the attention away from the beginning and at the end of the piece. Sort of glue them together well, compositionally and in terms of editing. It's a different narration. The music has to play. The music has to inspire you to think and solve puzzles of different kinds.
How did you come to making music for video games?
I played video games since I was 6, and that was the same year that I started playing piano. So music and video games have always been present in my life since early years and has been very important to me. So it's only natural that I would one day marry those two things and choose them as my professional way of living. How did it happen? I always knew I wanted to do it. When I was practicing jazz, when I was practicing classical music on piano, I was not only that I was completely open to an idea like many people are, but I really wanted to do it. And when I graduated Berklee, I graduated film scoring, which is somewhat similar to video game. You score the visual media. And finally, when I scored the trailer, which I mentioned already, for the Dark Souls, that was my gate to the world of game developers, of game development. So I scored this game that I told you about called Mousecraft. Then the next one was The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. And then, sort of in parallel to Ethan Carter, I was doing The Witcher.
When doing a score for a video game, is the creative part entirely in your hands, or do developers give you guidelines regarding style or even instrumentation?
I think the smaller the developer, the more open it is to me taking the direction and giving out ideas to them. When there's on the other hand, when we are dealing with a AAA title, there is much more responsibility involved, I think, and there is always a music director, a music lead, and audio lead who has already some preconceived ideas of what I should be doing. So the more money involved, the bigger the project, the less decisions I have to make, I guess.
How much do you know about the game when starting to work on the score?
It's very often that I get to see a quick time from the game or screenshots from the game, and I get to talk with a game developer what the game is all about. So I don't know how all the levels will look like, but I know the physics of it. I know the difficulty of it. I more or less know how the player should feel like, what the player should feel like when playing this game, and I more or less know what I should invoke with my music in him or her.
What does music add to a video game?
Well, first word that comes to my mind without much thinking is depth. Depth of an experience. More content, more emotions. Music by itself is an emotion-generating art. And so if you add it to a game, something that a player cautiously takes part in, then obviously chances are higher than he or she will get emotions from it. What does it? It scores all the actions. It highlights it underscores all the actions that are in the game. So it makes the experience ever more immersive. It adds, this is important, I think, it adds definition to a game. If the soundtrack is well done, has a strong theme, players will more likely remember the game after years and years, and the whole experience will come back to them when they hear the music.
If someone is thinking about making music for video games, can you give them a tip or tell them about a pitfall you stepped right in?
Fortunately, I can't think of anything that I did wrong, like you said, of any pitfall. But I can advise, obviously meet people and work on your music and play video games so that you feel the medium. But focus on your own style. Don't copy too much unless it's for learning purposes. And give yourself time.
You seem to have a close relationship to CD Projekt Red. Will we see a Mikolai Stroinski Cyberpunk 2077 score in the future?
It's too early to say. I can't talk about CD Projekt, the Cyberpunk at this point. Thank you for asking.
Can't blame a guy for trying.
No, yeah, by all means. Good. I appreciate the question, though.